desire to have a close and a strong relationship with God? Do you want to know who He is even more than what you know right now? Well, one of the strongest ways to build a bond with God is through solitude, through spending time alone with Him. In this week's video, we're going to be talking about how to have a quiet time and to spend time alone with God coming up. Hello and God bless. My name is Neville Solomon and welcome to Solomon Ministries. If you're new to this channel, please, we'd love for you to just enjoy the content that's here. And if you'd like to subscribe, leave a comment, and please press like. If you're a regular on this station, we're happy to have you again, and we know that you're going to be blessed. Also, for people who are new or those who are on our station, a part of our community, please remember to press the notification button if you want to be notified of future videos coming out. Well, in today's episode, we're going to be talking about a powerful topic. We're going to continue on talking about a quiet time. But I'm going to be talking more specifically about how to have solitude with God. Having solitude with God means that you spend time alone with Him, you spend time focusing on Him, and you spend all of your energy trying to create an intimacy with Him. So it's very important, if you want to know God, that you have to spend time alone with Him. So when we're talking about a quiet time, you can have a quiet time with a partner, but the most effective means of having a quiet time is in solitude alone with God. So what is solitude? Solitude is the time that you spend alone in prayer, in worship, in Bible study, in thanksgiving, thinking about your community and intercession, just the time that you spend alone with God. Today we're going to be talking about solitude from three different perspectives. The first perspective of solitude is, where should I spend time with God, or what is the location of my solitude? The second thing we're going to be talking about today is we're going to be talking about the duration of my solitude. How long should my solitude be? And then lastly, we're going to be talking about the intensity of my solitude. What exactly is the activity that I should be doing in terms of spending time with God? So first, like I was talking about, we're going to talk about location. You can have solitude at work. You're at your computer working, a lot of people working from home right now, and you can just take 10 minutes out and just focus on God, silence your mind and think about Him, and you have some solitude with Him. Perhaps the most effective means of solitude is that you can actually have solitude by being at home and perhaps selecting a room or selecting a certain area in your house where you can get alone. And you can spend as much time as you'd like to spend with them, probably an hour, for many people maybe less, where you can just spend time alone with God in solitude, where you can think about Him, where you can pray, where you can do Bible study and so forth. In terms of location, you can also, if your house is crowded and there's a lot of people in your house, you can have a time in your car. Or depending on the weather where you live, you can have time in the community. Like you can have time at the beach. I myself am just enjoying nature, just having a nature walk where you have solitude with God. But there are various locations where you can have your solitude, but you have to make certain that wherever you are, it's a place where you cannot be distracted and you and God can spend time together alone. Secondly, we're talking about the duration. The duration of my solitude. How much time should I spend alone with God? This can vary, but the one thing that is attached to the time that you spend is the quality of the time that you spend, and the quantity of the time that you spend will allow your solitude with God to have more power. So if I spend time focused on God and I spend a lot of time with God, that time with God will transform me and I will become like the God that I'm serving. So if you want to be a person that, has a fire for God, you got to spend time with God. You want to be a person that understands the Word of God, you have to spend time with God. You want to be the kind of person that you admire at church because you see that there's a deep devotion and dedication to God, then you have to spend time with God. So when we're talking about duration, for most people, it's reasonable to spend about an hour a day with God. Where you have a quiet time, whether it's in the morning, I think the morning is preferred, or it's in the afternoon or the evening. Some people have their quiet time at lunch because that's the time where they're able to be alone without the kids. But whatever time you choose, You can spend a time, an hour or so, where you just worship God, where you just pray, where you just study the Bible, where you draw close to God. There's so many other activities within those spheres where you can journal, you can just sit down and meditate, you can just be in silence. We're going to talk a little bit more about the different activities coming up, but I just wanted us to be able to spend time with God. It's very, very important that we can just spend time with Him. So an hour a day is reasonable. But in terms of if you want to intensify the time that you spend with God, you need to spend a little bit longer. So if you have a day off or you have some time set aside, perhaps you can have a special time maybe each month or maybe even each week, depending on your schedule, where you can spend maybe 3 or 4 hours with God. I find that Sundays are excellent if you don't have to work on Sunday, is that you can actually go to church, enjoy the presence of God and be with Him in community. But then if you're able to carve out some time on your own, you can spend maybe 3, 4 hours alone with Him, where you can really just build that intimacy with Him. You see, if you're in praise and worship, praising God for an hour, and you go back home, you know, it's like you've been blessed, you got a snack, and it's good. But if you can be in praise and worship for 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, some people even 10 hours, it will transform your life. We're living in a time period where everybody is so busy, you know, busy going to recreational activities, busy working, busy doing this, busy doing that. But we went through a pandemic where all those things were stopped. And I think that a part of what we can learn from that is that we're so busy doing everything for ourselves and everything for others. When are we going to spend time with God? So I would encourage you to spend a large quantity of time with God. Even if it's once a month, have time where you spend 3, 4, 5 hours with Him, praying, worshiping, doing Bible study, focused on it. Not just doing Bible study, watching your favorite preacher on TV, changing the station, eating some chips, and doing some work, from work on the weekend. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about where you take all of your attention and you focus it on God for 5, 6 hours, 10 hours. You see, when I grew up in church, church was a very different environment. For those who applied themselves, they had different experiences than we have today. Most people today, they think that they're a good Christian if they go to church on Sunday, maybe once or twice a month, and if they don't swear and if they do nice things. But they don't understand that the power of Christianity is spending time with God. So when I was growing up, we're talking about 5, 6 hours, maybe 10 hours. When I was growing up, people used to spend a weekend. You'd go to church for the weekend and they have something that they call a shut-in, where the door would be shut, and for the weekend you would spend that time in prayer, spend that time with God, spend that time worshiping God. I know that our schedules are very, very busy, but we do get time off. So when we have our vacations, we need to have a vacation with God, a weekend with God. In 365 days, you just have a time period where you have a weekend with God, where you can sit down, study the Word, pray, get close to God, and just connect with Him. If you do that at least once a year, you will grow. You will grow spiritually, because spiritual growth comes from spending time with God. But I'd like to challenge you even further, is because when I was young, we used to have this thing called convocation. It was a week of where we had church. We had church from Sunday right back to 8 days later to another Sunday, and we were at church basically from morning until night. So we spent the whole entire week with God. And you know what? In that experience, I could really feel myself grow. I understood the Bible. In 1 week, what I learned in 1 week is what I oftentimes learned in a year at church. Now, if you have the opportunity to go to a meeting, a church meeting around the world, where they have church for a week, that's great. But currently in the time period that we're in, there's not a lot of services that are happening. So it's very, very important that what we can do is that we can actually create our own time. Have a week at home, a week of worship. If you have a family, bring your family into it. But at the end of the day, we need to spend as much time as we can spend with God. If you can afford it, I would challenge you to even spend a month with God. To take 30 days and be with God. You know, of course, you can have a little vacation, be at the pool, relax a little bit, but spend time with God, because that's the thing that transforms us. A lot of patterns of thoughts that we have them because we're too busy to know what God is really thinking, to hear what God is really saying. But if we can slow ourselves down and spend time with Him, that will transform us. So number one I was talking about was that it's very important for us to have a location to be alone with God. Number two, I just finished talking about, it's very important that we have a time period, a set time period that we have with God. And number three is that we have to have some activities of solitude that connect us to God. So I mentioned three major activities already, but I'm going to add to them. Is that we need to have a time of worship where we sing and we praise God. We also need to have a time of Bible study where we can sit down and study the Bible. I don't have time here right now, but if you're to check out some of my other videos, they'll give you some ideas of how you can study the Bible. As a matter of fact, I'll just put a link below to show you different ways that you can study the Bible, but you can spend weeks studying the Bible. There are 66 books in the Bible, and in all those books, there are so many different characters, so many different people, so many different interactions with God, that we could spend weeks studying the Bible. As a matter of fact, we could spend our whole life studying the Bible. Even if we didn't work, you can sit down 365 days of your life and study the Bible and still learn. So one of the great activities that we have is the activity of studying the Bible. We also have the activity of prayer. We could pray forever. As a matter of fact, that's what heaven is. Heaven is us expressing our communication and love to God, prayer, forever. So I can pray to God just about my own personal needs and my own personal life for days. But if you add to that intercessory prayer, which is praying for somebody else's needs, caring about somebody else, caring about those that are around you, but also caring about those that you don't even know, where you begin to pray intensely and ask God to move in your life. I think it's very important. So those are some activities of solitude. Another activity of solitude is fasting. If you refrain from eating is very essential to us. Eating and drinking are very essential to us. If you refrain from eating and drinking, and you choose to turn to the Bible and prayer and Bible study, and choose to turn to spiritual things to connect with God, fasting is a means of solitude that will transform your life. Because you move away from the natural food and you go after the spiritual food, and you connect with God in a deeper and a more meaningful way. Some of the greatest breakthroughs in my own personal life have come through times of fasting. Fasting can be half a day. Fasting can be a day. Fasting can be 3 days. Fasting can be 7 days. Depending upon the type of fasting, fasting is primarily food and drink, but you can fast from media, social media, from television. You can fast from pretty much anything that's distracting you from spending time with God. As a matter of fact, one of our greatest fasts is, we call it vacation, where we fast from going to work. But instead of having vacation to relax our body, sometimes we need to have a vacation to empower our soul and empower our spirit. So fasting is very essential. I can go through so many different aspects of activities of solitude, but I'm just going to give you 3 more. I think silence is very, very important as it relates to solitude. You don't always have to be silent when you're having solitude with God, because I think that a lot of times you can communicate with God, but sometimes, especially when you feel the presence of God, sometimes you just have to be quiet. You're quiet for many reasons, but I think one reason why you're quiet is to hear God speak. Another reason why you can be quiet in your solitude is out of reverence and respect for God, just to enjoy His presence. Sometimes our mind is constantly talking, our mouths are constantly talking, that we don't really experience God. So another activity that you can do is maybe for an hour, maybe for 2. And even though it might sound small if you're spending a week with God, I'm telling you, 2 hours of silence, man, you really know what's going on in your mind. But spend some time alone with God. Another activity is writing, journaling. Sit down and write down prayers, or write down your heart to God. In fact, I even found that this works, is that sometimes when you're frustrated and you're angry, write down what's really in your spirit. Write down what you're really angry about and ask God to help you with your sin, to forgive you. And then take that piece of paper, tear it up, burn it, throw it away. But at the end of the day, writing is a powerful activity of solitude. Lastly, and I could go on and on and on about activities of solitude. Lastly, I think it's very important for us when we're in a time of solitude to begin to plan with God. Plan with God. Plan with God what you're going to do with your future. Say, Lord, you know the gifts you've given me. You know what you want to do in my life. You know my history. You know my heart. You know what you made me for. I'm staying in solitude to get a revelation from you as to how you want to use me. Because all of us, we have a purpose in this life. And most of us, we will never really know what our purpose is because we never spend enough time with God. But if you spend time with God, God can talk to you. God can transform your life. So when we're talking about solitude, it's important for us to have a location, have places where we meet God. It's important for us to have durations of time where we meet God. And it's very important for us to have activities, spiritual activities, where we connect with God, where we can feel His Spirit, where we can feel His presence. I'm not just talking about just doing things, to kind of pass the time. Just read the Bible. I got to read chapter 6. I'm talking about engaging chapter 6, where you can feel God's presence, where you can feel God's power. So I want to share this video with you. I've gotten so many comments about our quiet time videos so far. People have been blessed all around the world. People have been blessed so much by these videos that I really wanted to do one on solitude, because I find that I'm in church. If you're really, really serious about God, you're gonna engage the Bible. If you're really, really serious about God, you're gonna pray. If you're really, really serious about God, you're gonna get into that worship. You're gonna worship hard. But I find a lot of us who are serious about God, we do not have times of solitude. Now, quiet time in itself is solitude, but I'm expressing to you a deeper need to spend some weeks with God, so that when your time on earth is over, you can know that I've spent some years of my life, not just sleeping, years of my life, not just eating, years of my life, not just complaining and watching TV, but I spent some years of my life with the God that created me. I prepared for heaven on earth. Well, anyways, God bless you. I pray that this video has been a blessing, and I know that you'll be transformed if you spend time with God. Well, I hope that you enjoyed that video and that you're blessed. If you'd like more videos from us moving in the future, please feel free to comment, like, and subscribe. And if you'd like to receive ongoing updates, just press the notification button. Thank you so much for visiting us, and we know that God's going to bless you. Thank you.